She looked harmless until the medallion hit the table. They didn't see a threat. They saw a woman with a thrift store jacket, cracked boots, and a pack that looked too heavy for her shoulders. So when they pulled her out of the line at Ravenstone, no one questioned it. Not until they opened the wrong pocket and the air turned cold. "Step aside. Ma'am, random check." The voice came from Sergeant Kyle Dorn, cold and clipped, just loud enough to turn heads. At Ravenstone Border Station, nothing was ever truly random. The woman they pulled from the line looked ordinary. Hair tied back, face unreadable, clothes thrifted from somewhere forgettable. Her name, if anyone had bothered to check, was Callie Ward, 36, traveling alone, carrying a weathered canvas pack and not much else. But when they opened that bag and found the hidden pouch and pulled out a faded silver medallion marked with an eagle's talon clutching a dagger, the entire checkpoint froze. Radios crackled, then went quiet. The smirks disappeared, because every trained eye recognized it, not the symbol itself, but the level of clearance it suggested. Who was she, and why did one coin dull, scratched, almost forgotten make hard-edged security personnel act like they just unearthed a live grenade? 3 years ago, Callie had been someone else entirely. Back then, her name appeared only in redacted mission logs, beneath code names and black bars. She'd served in Echo Unit 9, a deep shadow division of the Phantom Recon program, a unit so clandestine even internal systems called them Tier 4 ghosts. She'd earned that medallion the hard way through courses designed to break you, missions no one returned from, choices that don't look like victory, even when they are. Now she was invisible, on purpose. Just another backpacker, a woman who looked like she'd be ignored at every crossing, unless someone needed to feel powerful. Unfortunately, today was one of those days. Ravenstone Station had a reputation. Not for security, for humiliation. It was the kind of border crossing where junior guards proved dominance on civilians too tired to protest, where searches weren't about threats, but about control. Callie had known all that, but the safe path wasn't available to people like her anymore. She'd stood in that line for 47 minutes. Then came the random selection. It was never random. They scanned the crowd for someone alone, silent, unassuming. She fit the profile perfectly, but when they called her forward, she moved with a stillness they weren't trained to recognize. Not fear, not obedience, just muscle memory. "Let me guess," Officer Taylor Brandt said, holding up a coil of paracord like it offended her. "You think surplus gear makes you dangerous?" Her voice had that familiar sharpness, the kind used to cut people down in front of an audience. Beside her, Sergeant Dorn added without looking up, "Looks like somebody's prepping for a Boy Scout apocalypse." Laughter followed, scattered and small, enough to sting. Callie didn't respond. She'd heard it all before. From instructors who said women didn't belong in Black Ops. From teammates who thought silence meant weakness. From enemies who mistook her for a bystander until it was too late. Their words didn't hurt. They never had. But what struck her now was how easy it was to disappear, how thoroughly she'd erased herself. They weren't mocking her. They were mocking a ghost they couldn't see. "What else we got here?" Dorn muttered, pulling more items from her pack. Compass, water tablets, blade, things chosen for survival. Not style. The crowd gathered closer, feeding off the mockery, seeing what they were told to see, a woman playing dress-up. But they weren't seeing the real weight of that pack or what it had cost to earn it. Callie's mind slipped sideways. Images flickered. Overwatch from a crumbling rooftop. Whispers in her earpiece. The exact moment she pulled a trigger that saved 2 lives and ended 1. They'd written that op off as acceptable loss, but she remembered every second. She remembered earning every tool now laid out on the table in places where silence was strategy, and hesitation meant death. "You're awfully quiet," Brandt said, stepping in close. "Nothing to say for yourself?" Callie finally met her eyes. "I've said enough, just not here." Brandt blinked momentarily, caught off guard by the calm. But Dorn wasn't done. She's got enough gear in this thing to survive a full collapse. Bit much for a tourist, don't you think? Before Callie could reply, something shifted. Another guard, older, sharper, was no longer watching the show. Warrant Officer Rains. He ran a hand along the interior lining of the pack, slowed, paused. His fingers pressed into a seam that shouldn't have existed. A hidden zipper. "Hold up," he muttered. He worked the stitching open, deliberate, careful, and pulled something out. The laughter stopped. A dull silver coin, worn and scratched, slid into the light. Etched on its face, an eagle's talon gripping a downward blade. The faded insignia of Phantom Recon. Echo Unit 9. Conversations died. Even the radio seemed to pause. Eyes locked on the object that no one expected, but some recognized immediately. Callie Ward didn't move. She didn't need to, because the moment they saw the coin, the narrative collapsed, and the silence. It wasn't awkward. It was reverent. The crowd that had gathered to watch a routine humiliation now stood in frozen silence. What they'd thought was entertainment had just turned into a classified moment. Callie Ward looked down at the object in the guard's hand. Not a weapon, not a badge, just a dull, worn medallion. But it wasn't ordinary. Etched across the silver, a predator's claw, gripped tight around a downward blade, not polished, not pristine, but unmistakable. A coin of ghosts. She met Sergeant Dorn's eyes and spoke words she hadn't said in years. Echo Unit 9. Shadow Tier designation. The weight of it landed harder than any uniform. The room stopped breathing, because in that moment, narratives collapsed. What they thought they knew became irrelevant. Have you ever judged someone by how little they said, only to find out they'd already lived through more than you could handle? Strength isn't loud, and danger doesn't always walk in with boots and orders. Dorn still held the coin, frozen. His lips moved. Unsure. Echo 9. Even civilians who skimmed military conspiracy threads knew the rumors of Phantom Recon, of black sites and disavowed units, of operations that left no footage, no footprints, only aftermath. Officer Brandt swallowed hard. "Sir," she whispered to Chief Inspector Creed, "we need to verify this. Now!" She didn't need to finish the thought. Everyone understood. Mocking a civilian was a slap on the wrist. Mocking her could trigger internal audits and top-down fallout. Creed, a man who had seen his share of real operators, moved slowly, like approaching a predator disguised as prey. "Ma'am," he said with deliberate calm, "we'll need to verify. I'm sure you understand." Callie nodded once. She always knew this might happen. Carrying the medallion again wasn't about proof. It was about readiness. She spoke evenly, like reading coordinates off a mission brief. Serial Alpha 79 Charlie Delta 04. Directive Ember Point. Iron Dagger, Dust Light Mirage. Creed flinched. Those weren't just ops. They were mythologies buried in redaction. Her tone made one thing clear. She hadn't heard those names. She'd lived them. "From the perimeter," someone muttered. Jesus Christ. The crowd of guards didn't just fall quiet. They fell still, like people suddenly aware they'd been standing too close to something volatile. The checkpoint's mood turned electric, heavy. Dorn stepped back as if realizing he'd been holding something radioactive, because he had. That coin pulled from a hidden seam had rewritten the rules of the room. And Callie Ward was no longer someone you could dismiss. She was someone you saluted even if you didn't understand why. Every verification request leaves a footprint. Callie Ward knew that. For 3 years. She'd avoided those footprints, avoided calls, clearance pings, even whispers that might lead someone back to her. But now, the Phantom Medallion was on the table. Her Shadow Tier designation had been spoken aloud, and half the checkpoint had seen it. There was no more hiding. The cat was out of the bag, and it had claws sharp enough to tear through classified layers. While the supervisor placed the call, a quiet transformation took place. The younger guards, the same ones who'd smirked, chuckled, and mocked, now stood back. Arms at their sides, postures suddenly respectful, like junior officers caught out of uniform in front of a general. The veterans. They edged closer, their movements subtle, their faces unreadable, except for the reverence in their body language. One of them, a grizzled corporal with storm-gray temples, spoke softly, "Ma'am. My son's in the Navy. He'd give anything to shake hands with someone like you." Callie nodded once. Not unkindly, but said nothing. She'd learned long ago that hero worship is just another trap, because heroes are expected to be perfect, and perfection will crush you faster than war ever could. She wasn't a hero. She was a survivor, a ghost who carried things no one else would, not because she had to, but because no one else came back. The verification took 12 minutes, 12 minutes of waiting in silence, with every eye on Chief Inspector Donovan Creed, who stood by the secure terminal. His face shifted slowly as he listened, from curiosity to concern, from concern to disbelief, and finally, to something near panic, masked by forced calm. When he hung up, the air in Ravenstone felt charged, still, like something ancient had just stirred. "Ma'am," Creed said, clearing his throat. "Your credentials have been confirmed. You're cleared for immediate passage. No further inspection required." But his tone, it carried subtext loud enough to shake walls. He wouldn't meet her eyes. His posture had stiffened. And behind that formal voice was one undeniable truth. Someone powerful had made a call and ordered everything to stop. Sergeant Dorn stepped forward with the caution of a man approaching a tripwire. Callie's bag had been repacked with careful precision, and now, atop the folded gear, lay the Phantom medallion, no longer hidden, its scratched silver surface catching the overhead light like a badge of shame or defiance. Dorn held it out. I want to apologize for everything. We didn't know." Callie took the bag and slung it over her shoulder, and somehow, the motion looked completely different now. Not the casual swing of a tourist, but the balanced, practiced heft of someone who'd carried weight through enemy territory, where every ounce could kill you. "You weren't supposed to know," she said simply, and walked toward the gate. The checkpoint parted like water. Guards stood at attention. Travelers stared, some with awe, some with confusion, all with the unmistakable realization that they had misjudged a ghost. In the background, radios crackled to life. Urgent voices, new protocols, frantic updates, paperwork being reclassified, digital traces being erased. Callie paused at the final exit, turned back. Officer Brandt, once loud, now silent, caught her gaze. She mouthed a single word, "Sorry." Callie nodded once, then vanished through the gate, leaving a silence behind that felt heavier than any uniform. Officer Taylor Brandt submitted her resignation 3 days later. The official reason was personal, but everyone at Ravenstone Border Station knew the truth. She'd insulted a woman who'd earned her Phantom medallion through trials few could even imagine. Chief Inspector Creed issued new internal protocols. Officially, they emphasized professionalism. Unofficially, the message was simpler. Treat every traveler like they might be someone who matters. But the most lasting change came from the younger guards. They stopped seeing travelers as threats to dominate. They started wondering, what if the next quiet woman in line was someone like her? Callie Ward disappeared as silently as she had arrived. No contact info, no forwarding address. Just a log entry and a story whispered across outposts for miles. Veterans made quiet inquiries. What they found sounded like fiction deployments to places that didn't exist, commendations that weren't allowed to be printed, a discharge that raised more questions than answers. One retired Marine said it best: she was the real thing, whatever ended her career. It wasn't weakness. Weeks later, a small plaque appeared near the inspection zone. No name, no signature, just one line. Some ghosts wear boots. No one took it down, because everyone knew who it honored and why it mattered. Near the west gate, a young guard paused at the wall, his eyes lingering on the plaque that hadn't been authorized. He didn't know her name, but he would never forget what silence looked like.